Hello children, hope you all are doing very good, safe at home. Today we will learn a new chapter from chemistry. Is matter around us pure? In the previous chapter we have learned what is matter. Anything that occupies space and volume is matter. So what do we understand by the title is matter around us pure? So we see a lot of products around us in our day-to-day life. We buy milk, ghee, salt, sugar. So on the pack we could have seen this term pure milk, pure ghee. What do they actually mean by the term pure? That is, it is not being contaminated or adulterated by any other substances. So but chemically, if you buy the milk, even the purest milk, we cannot call it as pure because it is chemically a mixture of water and milk components. Therefore, what is a substance? A substance is a pure single form of matter. So substance is also a matter, but it contains a single form of matter. So it is single form of elements or single form of compound. When we say mixture, it contains more than one substances. So for example, take this beaker containing water. Anywhere around this beaker, it is going to be molecule of water only. Any part of the beaker you take, it is going to be H2O molecules only, and we cannot separate this H2O by physical processes like filtration, hand picking. We cannot just like that. If you pour this water into another beaker, we cannot say that we have separated the water, right? So H2O is a molecule here. Everywhere it is H2O, and it can be separated by special techniques like electrolysis. Okay, so what is a mixture? Mixture is against this pure form of substances. We will see that. So what is a substance? Matter is constituted by substances. Let it be solid, liquid or gas. So you see pure substance which has elements, and it can also be compound. For example, water. Element can be metals, I said. Here you see elements and compounds. What about elements? Examples will be metals and non-metals. Copper, oxygen. Oxygen is present in atmosphere, right? So when you take an oxygen molecule and try to break it, we cannot do that. And if you take an ion particle, a pure ion particle, and it is comprised of iron only, you cannot break down iron into any other smaller particles by physical processes. Physical is nothing but by filtration, by or hand picking. These are all called as physical processes. We cannot break down into smaller particles. So that ion particle is the smallest one, whereas in compound, which has, for example, as water, it has H2O molecules. Can we break down H2O molecules? By hydrolysis we can separate it out, but by physical processes like hand picking and filtration, we cannot separate them into smaller particles. So pure substances are those which is made up of elements or compounds, single type of element and single type of compounds. So it cannot be element and compound together. If it is together, we call them as mixtures. So in mixtures we have homogeneous and heterogeneous mixtures. We have seen this in the previous earlier classes. In homogeneous we have seen the sugar and water and salt and water. So what happens once they get dissolved, we cannot see sugar particles through our naked eyes. What about heterogeneous? When you mix sand with water, sand and salt, sugar and salt, water and oil, we can see the particles through our naked eyes. And we have also seen when a ray of light is passed into homogeneous and heterogeneous, how do they behave? We will see all that in detail. So what is a mixture? A substance is a pure single form of matter. And what is a mixture? It is constituted by more than one kind of substances. So you can see the differences. This we have learned in the earlier classes also. Here homogeneous particles are evenly distributed, right? So you cannot see on one part of the solution having more solutes and another part less No, we don't see that. So it's uniformly distributed. Salt in water and sugar in water is a very good example for homogeneous mixtures. What about particles of matter unevenly distributed in heterogeneous mixtures? When the light is scattered through these solutions, we can see, when the light is passed through these solutions, we can see that it is scattered. Right? We have seen Tyndall effect in this category. What is a solution? So what is a solution? It is a mixture. What type of mixture it is? It is a homogeneous mixture of two or more substances. So for example, you see tea here. Tea powder is dissolved. When you boil the tea, what happens? And you filter out the tea powder from it. So we get a tea where you cannot see the tea particles being dissolved. Right? Through our naked eyes, we cannot see. And if you try to send a beam of light through this, will the beam of light get scattered? No, because the particles are so tiny. They are of the size nanometers, 10 to the power of -9. So we cannot see those particles. And these solutions are called as homogeneous. So what do we understand from the term solute and solvent? So what is a solute in the tea that you see here? Solute are the components which are getting dissolved in the solution. That is, tea powder is the one which is getting dissolved. So we can call tea powder as a solute, and they are generally in the lesser quantity. And solvent need not be always a liquid. Solvent need not be always a liquid. Okay, it's in the larger amount and the solute is getting dissolved in solvent. So here, what is a solvent in tea? Water. Water is a solvent where the tea is getting dissolved. Therefore, the solution is tea. And here examples: lemonade. Lemonade is nothing but the lemon juice. And what about soda water? Soda water, what is a gas that is being dissolved in the water? It's carbon dioxide. What about alloy? The utensils that we see in a kitchen, stainless steel, they are all a mixture of elements, two or more elements. Iron, nickel, cadmium, all these are mixed to form a stainless steel. So they are homogeneous. So in this case, the solvent is not a liquid. That we generally think that solvent is always a liquid. In the case of alloy, both are solids, but still it is a homogeneous mixture. That is, equal amount are being mixed. Whereas what about the air, atmosphere? It is a gaseous mixture. It's a gaseous mixture of many gases, right? Carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen, argon. All these are a mixture of gases in the atmosphere. And they are homogeneous. So we can see the properties of homogeneous. We have learned this very much in our earlier classes, so please go through. Now we will go to the concentration of a solution. Whenever we talk about a solution, we will talk about concentration. For example, when you look at the tea, you say this is very strong tea and this is a very light tea. Even with respect to coffee, we say this is strong. What do you mean by strong? That is, it has more solute in it. So here we have three types of in homogeneous itself. We can see three types of solution: saturated solution, concentrated, and dilute. So from the name we understand concentrated solution is quite thick, more solute particles are there. In dilute solution, less solute particles are there. What about saturated solution? Saturated solutions are those in this, at a given temperature, this is the maximum. There will be a quantity of solute. Above that, the solute will not get dissolved in that solution. For example, take a beaker with water, add sugar in it. At one point, you cannot add sugar. You can see the sugar getting deposited at the bottom. That is, it cannot get dissolved. So maximum capacity of the solute that can be dissolved in the solution, we call that as a saturated solution. So, and that amount of solute is called as the solubility. That is, That is the maximum amount of solute that can be added to the solution. That amount is called as a solubility. So what is concentrated? Which is slightly lesser than the saturated. That is concentrated solution. Dilute is very little solute. The amount of solute is very less in this solution. When compared to saturation level, the amount of solute is very less. And so concentration of the solution is given by the amount of solute divided by amount of solution. And we can also find the mass percentage of the solution. So it's very simple. Mass of the solute divided by mass of the solution into 100. It's the same thing, concentration multiplied by 100. So we just go through one example to find the solution concentration. So here in this question you see a solution contains 40 grams of common salt. So common salt is the solute. Common salt is the solute here. What is the amount of salt or the solute? 40 grams. And 320 grams of water is the solvent. So together they make a solution, right? When we add this 40 grams of salt into water, that is, which is 320 grams of water, together they form a solution. So how do we find the concentration? Amount of solute by amount of solvent into 100 here. So mass of the solute is given by 40 grams and the solvent 320 grams. Together they make the mass of the solution, which is 40 plus 320, 360. Then now to find the mass percentage of the solution, we have the formula mass of solute divided by mass of solution into 100. So that is 40 by 360 into 100 gives you 11.1 percentage. Since we are multiplying with 100, it gives you in percentage. So this is nothing but mass percentage of the solution. So now moving on to heterogeneous mixture, there are two types, suspension and colloidal solution. In suspension, the solute particles are suspended in the medium. That is, it is floating in the medium. If it is left undisturbed, all these particles settle down. When the particles are suspended and if you send a beam of light pass through the solute mixture, what happens? You can see these particles scatter that beam of light. But after they settle down, if you allow the beam of light pass through them, then you can see that the mixture doesn't scatter the beam of light. And the solute particles in suspension are bigger than homogeneous mixture. Therefore, it is visible to the naked eye. And all these particles can be separated from the mixture by process of filtration. So if you use a filter paper and try to separate sand and water, it is very easily the sand particles are filtered, right? Therefore, particles can be separated from the mixture by process of filtration and other physical processes. So Tyndall effect. We have seen this in grade 8 and we have also conducted small experiments on this. So Tyndall effect can be seen by colloidal solutions. So why it is done? Why it is possible only by colloidal solutions? Because the colloidal particles are suspended in the mixture and they do not settle down even if it is left undisturbed, and these particles are slightly bigger than the homogeneous mixture particles and therefore they can scatter the beam of light when it is passed through them. And examples are fine beam of light. If a fine beam of light enters a room through a small hole, what happens? You can see this here. The beam of light is scattered because of the dust particles which are present in the room. What about the sunlight which passes through a canopy in a dense forest? Even in forest and during the morning you can see a lot of fog and mist covered. Therefore, this water particles, or what do you call them, dewdrops, which scatter the beam of light and it looks really beautiful. This we have conducted. This is a laser beam of light which is passing through the homogeneous mixture as well as heterogeneous mixture. In the first beaker, the light is not being scattered. That is because it is a homogeneous mixture. And the second beaker contains a colloidal solution. Therefore, you can see that the beam of light is scattered. So we can see its path. Therefore, colloidal solution is a heterogeneous mixture. The colloidal particles are very tiny but slightly bigger than homogeneous particles. They cannot be seen through naked eyes, but they are big enough to scatter a beam of light. You can see that here. And when they are left undisturbed, just like homogeneous mixture, the colloidal particles do not settle down. Therefore, they are quite stable. And these particles can be separated by the special technique called as centrifugation. The solute particles in colloidal solution are called as dispersed phase, and the solvent is called as a dispersion medium. So you can see the examples here. How do we separate the components from mixture? These are the list of techniques that are used for heterogeneous and homogeneous mixtures. We will take up each one of them and learn in detail. How to separate a mixture which has volatile component and non-volatile component. That is, volatile components are those which can vaporize easily. For example, ink. Ink is actually a heterogeneous mixture of dye and water. How can we separate these components? That is, water can evaporate easily. Therefore, we use a process called as evaporation. You can see here on the right hand side a beaker with water, and we place ink, few drops of ink on the watch glass to the mouth of the beaker, and once you heat the water, you can see that the water component or the volatile component in the ink is getting vaporized. You see the vapors here, so leaving the dye behind. Therefore, the volatile component is being separated from ink. Chromatography is another technique where dye can be separated from its solvent. Here, paper chromatography is used. So it's a very simple technique. You can see the picture here. So take a filter paper and a beaker containing water, 30 ml water, and cut the strip in this shape and mark with your ink, fountain ink pen, and draw a line horizontal to the base and place this or immerse this in a beaker containing water. You can see that the water is getting absorbed here. Can you see that water is rising in the filter paper? As the water rises in the second beaker, you can see along with the water, the ink is also rising. What is that? The dye is getting separated out from the solvent. So as the water moves in the filter paper is absorbing the water, right? Along with that water, you can see the ink is getting separated. The dye is getting separated from the ink, because ink is nothing but a mixture of dye and water. So this is paper chromatography. So chromatography is a technique which is used for the separation of those solutes that dissolve in the same solvent. That is, the different colors, different dyes can be dissolved in water medium itself. So for such mixtures, chromatography is used. So we have seen that the components of the colloidal solution can be separated by a technique called as centrifugation, and the instrument or the apparatus used for this is centrifuge. So here what do we see? You would have seen this centrifuge in diagnostic laboratories. When the blood sample is collected in the test tube and placed in a centrifuge, it is allowed to spin. You can see this arrow mark here. So when the centrifuge is spinning, what is happening? The centrifugal force is acted upon the object here this way. The centrifugal force is acting, and what happens? It separates the components of the blood, leaving the plasma on the top of the test tube and the serum at the bottom, because serum is denser than the plasma. Similar technique is used for separating the milk from the milk. That is, the fatty part of the milk is cream and the skimmed part is collected on the other outlet. You can see this here. There are two outlets. So one collects the cream part and the other collects the skimmed milk. Skimmed milk is the part of the milk which does not have fat. So in the same way, when the milk is stored here in this container and it is allowed to spin, it separates out the components. The denser one comes out at the bottom, and the top outlet, can see it removes the skimmed milk. So what is the definition of centrifugation? It is a process in which centrifugal force is used to separate the denser particles from the lighter ones in a mixed liquid or two insoluble solids from liquids. And we have seen the applications in the previous slide, how the cream is being separated from the milk, and also in the case of blood sample, how plasma is separated from the other part of the blood, which is a serum. And then the same technique is also used in the dryers to squeeze out the water from wet cloths. So how do we separate two immiscible liquids? When we say immiscible, that is the liquids which do not mix well. They form layers based on their densities. So here a simple technique using separating funnel is being used for such purposes. That is, how do we separate if a mixture contains kerosene oil and water? So this mixture is poured in a separating funnel and the stopcock is closed. Once it is poured, it is allowed to settle down for some time, and you can see that they form layers. The kerosene oil is getting collected on the bottom, on the top, and the water at the bottom. Once it is done, once you can see the layers, the stopcock is opened. Water is first collected in a storage and then the kerosene oil in a separate storage. This is how the two immiscible liquids are separated. And then here on the right hand side we see separate salt and ammonium chloride. Ammonium chloride is a sublimable component, that is it is a solid. It can get converted to gas without undergoing a liquid phase. So that is what is sublimation, right? Therefore ammonium chloride is one of the example. Naphthalene, camphor, these are all examples for sublimable component, whereas salt is not. So how do we separate a mixture which contains these two components? That is, one is sublimable, the other one is non-sublimable. So this is a technique which is being used. Sublimation, that is, take a china dish containing the mixture. One is sublimable component like ammonium chloride and the other one is salt. So when this mixture is heated, sublimable, when we say it is volatile, that is it can vaporize easily. Therefore a funnel is being inverted on this mixture so that the vapors do not escape. And you can see the cotton plug which is used so that the vapors do not escape. And these vapors are nothing but ammonium chloride. They get solidified here. And this is how the ammonium chloride is separated from the mixture which contains salt as an impurity. Leaving behind the salt, all the vapors are getting collected here. So this is sublimation and separation of two immiscible liquids.
Distillation. We know that different methods are used for separation of different kinds of mixtures. But do you know how a mixture of two miscible liquids can be separated? Well, such a mixture can be separated by a method called distillation. Distillation is the process of separating miscible components of a mixture that do not decompose upon boiling and have sufficient difference in their boiling points. The process involves heating the liquid until boiling and then capturing and cooling the resultant vapors. The separation of liquids is usually achieved at their respective boiling points. The more volatile component vaporizes at its boiling point and then condenses in the condenser, while the other component is left behind in the distillation flask. Thus, separation of the mixture is achieved. Can you separate a mixture of acetone and water? Yes, it can be achieved by distillation. Let us have a look at the procedure of separation using distillation method. Firstly, take the mixture in a distillation flask fitted with a thermometer. Observe carefully how the apparatus is arranged. Then, heat the mixture slowly, keeping a close watch at the thermometer. See the acetone vaporizing and then condensing in the condenser. This acetone can now be collected from the condenser outlet. On the other hand, the water is left behind in the distillation flask. Do you know there are several important applications of distillation? Let us discuss a few important ones. Distillation is employed in food processing to produce distilled beverages. Large-scale industrial distillation is widely used in petroleum refineries, petrochemical, and natural gas processing plants. Production of essential oils and herbal distillate is carried out by steam distillation. In addition to these applications, distillation is also used to separate the mixture of ether and toluene, and the mixture of hexane and toluene.
Fraction distillation is also used to separate two miscible liquids with their boiling points having a very less difference, like a 25 Kelvin, and the apparatus is very similar to the distillation with an additional column called as fractionating column. It is nothing but a tube packed with glass beads. These beads provide surface for the vapors to cool and condense repeatedly. So we know that air or atmosphere is a homogeneous mixture of gases. So how are these gases separated? The technique used is a fractional distillation. Here you see that the impurities are removed from the air, and that air is passed into a compressor where the atmospheric air is compressed under pressure by lowering the temperature. So now the compressed hot air is passed into a condenser column where the freezing cold water is allowed to run through these tubes. This condenses or cools the hot air. It liquefies. So from here, the liquid compressed air is passed into the separator where carbon dioxide is collected first. And this liquid air is passed into a fractional distillation column. Here what happens is the gases from the air are collected at different heights based on their boiling points. Can you see them here? So we know that fractional distillation process is used for those liquids which has boiling points and the difference is very less. So here nitrogen, argon and oxygen. Nitrogen has got the least boiling point, and next is the argon, and then is the oxygen. Therefore oxygen is collected at the bottommost, and then is the argon and nitrogen. Nitrogen is the first to liquefy, and then argon, and then it leaves the liquid oxygen to be collected. You can see the flow chart here, how the air is being compressed, how the air is compressed in the compressor and then decreased the temperature by passing through the condenser. This liquid air is passed through fractional distillation column, and then you get the gases in the separate heights. So in the crystallization technique, we see that the components which are separated is in the form of crystal. So therefore, if a pure solid has a impurity like copper sulfate, if it has impurities, we can separate the copper sulfate from its impurities in the form of crystals, and this process is called as crystallization. To obtain a salt from seawater, we use this technique. This involves dissolution filtration, evaporation and cooling. We can see that here in the step 1, the impure solid is dissolved in a solvent like water, and then we filter out the impurities, and then it is evaporated by heating. By heating, most of the solvent is getting evaporated, leaving behind the solute with some solvent. You can see that in step 3. In step 4, this mixture is allowed to cool. Therefore, we can obtain the crystals, the salt crystals, leaving the solvent. So there is an advantage of crystallization over simple evaporation. That is, some solids decompose, or some like sugar may get charred on heating to dryness. So some impurities may remain dissolved in the solution even after filtration. On evaporation, this contaminates the solid. Therefore, crystallization is recommended over evaporation, simple evaporation. So this technique is also used to separate the crystals of alum from its impurities.
Drinking water is supplied from the waterworks. A typical waterworks consists of the following components. Sedimentation tank. Water is pumped from the water reservoir and is allowed to stand in these large tanks for a few hours. Mud, sand, and other solid particles settle at the bottom of the tank. Loading tank. Here, the suspended particles are made to settle at the bottom by adding potash alum. Filtration. The water from the sedimentation and loading tank is filtered through layers of sand and gravel in the filtration tank. Filtration is also done through activated charcoal, which affords better quality water. Chlorination. Finally, the filtered water is then treated with chlorine gas, which kills germs.
Chemical and physical changes. We have discussed this in earlier classes. That is what happens when a substance undergoes a physical change and what happens to a substance which undergo chemical change. So for example, you can take an ice. When it is kept in the room temperature, what happens? And when it is heated, what happens? It gets converted to liquid. Interconversion of states. What happens to the ice? It gets converted to liquid and then to vapor if it is continued on heating. And what happens to iron when it is rusted? Iron oxide, a new substance is formed. Chemical nature of the substance change, new product is formed. So it's an irreversible process and this is a reversible process. For example, we can cool the vapors, it becomes liquid, and continue to condense the liquid, it becomes solid. So it is a reversible process. And what about the substances which has fluidity, density, melting point? All these properties are physical properties. The color, hardness, for example, metals are hard, non-metals are soft. So these are all physical properties. And what about chemical properties like burning? Burning is a chemical change. So you should be able to differentiate which is physical change and chemical change. That is, for example, cutting of trees, whether it is a physical or a chemical change. Dissolving common salt in water, is it a physical change or a chemical change? burning of paper and wood. Whether it is a chemical or a physical change, you should be able to distinguish. We'll move on to the next slide. Mixtures and compounds. Compounds. Compounds are nothing but two or more elements combined together. And they are combined together in a particular or a fixed proportion. So what do we understand from the term element? It is metals, non-metals, or metalloids. Metals, you know, what are the properties of metals? They are lustrous, they are ductile, malleable, they conduct heat and electricity. These are all and they are also sonorous. That is, they make sound, the ringing sound when it is hit. So all these are properties of metals, and in non-metals we just see the opposite of these physical properties. That is, they are soft, they are not sonorous, and they are not ductile or malleable, and they are poor conductors of heat and electricity. So these metals, non-metals, and metalloids. Metalloids are those which has properties of both metals and non-metals. Examples, silicon and germanium. All these come under the elements, and these are all present in the periodic table. More than 100 elements are being discovered. So when these elements combine together chemically in a fixed proportion, we call them as compounds. What about mixtures? They are not chemically combined. These elements or compounds, they just mix together, and it can have a variable composite. That is, it can be mixed in a different proportion. So it need not be a fixed proportion. And these, even after combining, they show properties of their constituent substances. That is, it is no new product is being formed or no new substance is formed which will have a new property. They, even after combined, they exhibit their own properties, and the constituents can be separated easily by physical methods. Physical methods can be handpicking, filtration. And what about compounds? Constituents can be separated only by chemical or electrochemical reactions. For example is water. It has H2O, 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen is combined, and you can see that water is evenly having this compound molecule in it, and we cannot separate it by physical process, hydrogen and oxygen. It can be separated only by electrolysis method, which is an electrochemical reaction. Only by those techniques we can separate the constituents. Okay children, the chapter ends here with a lot of new concepts. So go through the slides, complete the notes. I'll send the notes through app, and there will be some questions which will not be answered in the notes. I want you people to take it as an assignment and work it out. Okay children, meet you in the next session. Thank you.